This story doesn't have a happy ending.
My daughter is 9 months old. In the last 7 months, I haven't been able to rock her, put her to sleep, or even give her a bath.
In fact, it doesn't have an ending at all. Not unless you, the person watching this, gives it one.
I have missed 80% of my daughter's life.
Why is that?
My name is Jeremy Newman. I'm the Vice President of Policy at the Family Freedom Project. We're helping defend two people who I think you should meet, Jackie and Juan. They're two normal people in a uniquely horrible situation. Their daughter, Evelyn, was taken from them at 6 weeks old, denied due process, and has been gone for the past 7 months. It begs the question, why? Well, it all started with baby Evelyn's birth.
Crazy, wonderful, I want to say. The whole situation, how I experienced it, but also kind of scary towards the end. I was pushing for a really long time. She was crowning, but it was taking forever. So after the end, they said they're gonna do a C-section. Her oxygen level dropped, so it turned to an emergency C-section. And from there, it was crazy. I passed out.
Thankfully, nothing bad happened to Evelyn, and they were able to take her home. At least, that's the way it appeared at the time. 6 weeks later, they started to notice some very strange behavior.
It was towards around February. That's when I noticed she was kind of fussy.
It was a weird cry, I don't know, I couldn't explain it.
We tried to feed her, and that's when she threw up. And I was like, okay, that's weird, because she never throws up. She spits up, never throws up. My mom came over so she can check what's going on. And then that's when we noticed her arm was twitching too. So me, Juan, and Evelyn, we went to the car to go to the hospital.
That is when everything started to unravel. When Jackie and Juan arrived at the hospital, they explained to the staff what was going on with Evelyn. Evelyn was taken for medical screening where the doctors noted in the medical charts that they had no concern for abuse or neglect. 4 hours later, she was taken to the radiologist for an MRI. When the results came back, the radiologist noticed a small brain bleed. 2 minutes later, a note was entered in the medical records that they suspected child abuse.
It took 2 minutes, 120 seconds, for someone who never met me to determine that I can't take care of my daughter.
At the time of this determination, neither the radiologist nor any other staff at Cook Children's had done any evaluation of any kind for alternative explanations for the bleeding. Furthermore, in court, the radiologist argued openly that when he viewed Evelyn's MRI, he could tell the difference between accidental trauma and abuse. So to be clear, he's saying that by viewing a picture of a broken blood vessel, he can tell whether it was broken by an inanimate object or a person, and also whether the person did it on accident or on purpose. On the stand, he refused to discuss any other possible circumstances that could have been a contributing factor to the injury in Evelyn's tiny brain, and declared the only explanation was a bad actor had unleashed a violent, brutal attack on the 6-week-old baby. 5 minutes after first looking at that MRI, the doctors spoke for the first time with Jackie and Juan.
And then that's when she told us what's going on with Evelyn with her brain. They were saying did y'all do this to her? Did y'all do this to her? Did y'all do this?
Have you been in a car crash recently?
Have we dropped Evelyn? If we pulled her, we
played tug of war with her or something, just
aggressive with her.
Here's the deal. I get it. When a doctor is inspecting an infant with injuries, abuse is something you'd expect them to check for. We want them to check for that. However, as the medical expert would later testify, child abuse is supposed to be a diagnosis of exclusion. That means you rule out all other possible medical explanations before you jump to the conclusion of child abuse. Instead, Cooks appears to have started with the assumption of child abuse almost from the very beginning.
They kept pushing it, and we kept saying, we never hurt her. We never dropped her. We never got in a car accident. We never did anything. We didn't do anything to her.
They couldn't find an explanation to the injuries.
So
it would be something dramatic or something like that to happen to her.
But the truth was, something dramatic did need to happen, like, say, an emergency C-section. The doctors didn't seem to have malintent. However, they did miss the obvious explanation that Evelyn's symptoms would have been a natural result of her extremely traumatic birth just a few weeks before. In fact, despite Evelyn being only 6 weeks old, they didn't even ask about her birth. The family's medical expert also testified that Evelyn's small brain bleed could have been caused by any number of normal bumps on the head that a child might experience. In fact, he pointed out in testimony, it is documented that a relatively minor impact on an infant's head in the exact location that Evelyn had her injury can produce the exact type of bleeding and swelling that Evelyn had experienced. Nevertheless, a few hours after Jackie and Juan showed up at the hospital asking for help, Cook Children's called CPS.
You know, I saw 2 officers out there after Dr. Pillar said we need to talk to people. I mean, like, it was pretty obvious to me. I was like, okay, we're getting blamed for this. But I was cooperating, just anything to help my daughter.
And that's when they told us, like, we're getting kicked out. Evelyn's gonna stay with them. And I was like, well, can my sister, can his mom, like, can one of our family members stay? And that's when the CPS worker said, no, like, no family member can be with her.
Really? Because Texas state law requires placement with relatives by default.
At that time, did they give any explanation of why?
The CPS worker said we couldn't tell them her injuries, so
Like, explain the injuries.
so we have to leave. So we're like in shock, of course. Like, they just told us they're taking her away from us, and we're crying. Like, I didn't want to leave her there by herself, but yeah, couldn't really do anything about it.
Instead, Evelyn was taken away and placed in foster care. After Evelyn's removal, a new CPS caseworker was assigned to manage the case. I brought along a little chart to help explain what happened next. I call this chart the craziness time continuum.
We received what seemed to us to be the worst CPS worker of all time.
To start, the CPS caseworker was caught fabricating evidence of domestic violence. Crazy. Next, she tried to trick Juan and Jackie into saying that they were guilty. Very crazy. She also told Jackie and Juan that their respective family members were blocked by court order from speaking with each other, which would have been very helpful to know if it weren't a blatant lie. Later, the judge asked her if she had filled out the paperwork to have Evelyn placed with family.
And she was just
She was like,
lost. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what paperwork?
around, yeah.
Unfortunately, the craziness didn't stop there. On top of not being very competent at her job, she decided to get a little bit theatrical.
She said Jackie came to a visit with a dude in a muscle shirt. He was ripped. He had gold necklaces on with a nice car. Came to see my daughter with Jackie.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not see the muscle shirt coming. This would be so much funnier if it didn't have very real consequences. As if all of this wasn't enough, she also told Jackie and Juan that
If we stay together, it's like we're choosing each other over Evelyn.
So after that, and for other reasons, I think that's why she got fired from the case.
So why is this a problem? I mean, I get that the CPS caseworker wasn't being fair, but we have courts for a reason, right? Why shouldn't Jackie and Juan just go to court and prove their innocence and move on with their lives? Well, courts only work when there is due process. Unfortunately, that was not the courtesy that they were willing to provide to Jackie and Juan. Their judge informed them halfway through the proceedings that no record was being kept. Without a record, the family has no ability to take the case to the Court of Appeals. Refusing to keep a record of the case is a flagrant denial of basic due process. Additionally, the court denied Jackie and Juan a court-appointed medical expert.
Yeah, we had asked the court to help us pay for an expert because we were deemed indigent, and our lawyers later told us that they couldn't, and they couldn't give a reason why.
Indigent means that Jackie and Juan's income was so low that they didn't have the means to defend themselves in court. so any defense that they were going to put on had to come from court-appointed experts and attorneys. But because the court denied them a medical expert, no outside source could give analysis on the MRIs from Cook's. That means that they had to go and find their own medical expert, which costs a lot of money that they didn't have.
On my side, we sold used cars to use the money.
And then on my side, I use $1,000 from my taxes. My sister and my brother-in-law really helped some of it too. My parents also helped. They gave me some of their savings, my parents. I'm really grateful for that too.
They got a medical expert on retainer who's a child abuse pediatrician who has testified in more than 500 cases both for parents and for CPS. He testified that there were obvious alternative medical explanations for Evelyn's injuries, but Cook Children's didn't appear to have investigated any of them. They jumped straight to the child abuse conclusion almost from the beginning. Despite this testimony, the judge ruled in favor of CPS and allowed them to keep Evelyn. This is when FFP joined the case. After receiving a call from their attorney, we knew that we had to do something. Getting the case to the Court of Appeals was impossible because the judge had refused to keep a record of the proceedings, but thankfully we were able to find another way. Jackie and Juan's attorneys filed a special motion that basically gives them a brand new hearing, a do-over with a new judge. At the first meeting with the new judge, Jackie and Juan's legal team insisted that a record of the meeting be kept. But the judge, like the first one, refused to keep a record. When Jackie and Juan's legal team requested that she put her refusal in writing in an official court order, she became so angry that she started yelling at their attorneys and threw them all out of her court chambers. A few hours later, she sent a court order to the attorneys notifying them that she was recusing herself from the case entirely. Let me be clear, that is incredibly rare. It also required that a third judge be appointed to handle the case. Jackie and Juan's case is now set to be heard on November 11th, 12th, and 13th. By the time of the hearing, Evelyn will have been separated from her parents for more than 9 months. That leads me to the reason we made this video. It wasn't for your entertainment and it wasn't for vengeance. Despite everything you've just heard, we still believe in the judiciary system, and we believe that given a fair hearing, Jackie and Juan will show their innocence and get their daughter back. But to give them that fair fight, guys, it has not been cheap. On top of working to file that special motion, we also have to put multiple medical experts on retainer so that they can testify at the upcoming hearing. We've brought on appellate counsel to prepare the case for the battle at a higher court. And on top of all of that, we're launching the statewide PR campaign to put pressure on CPS and Cook Children's to send Evelyn home. All of that costs money, and we can't do it alone. We're fundraising to help support Jackie and Juan, so if you have the means to be able to donate, please do. If you're not financially able, there is still a way that you can help for free. Share this video with a friend. Spread the word about Jackie and Juan's case, and that helps them put pressure on the judiciary and the medical system to get it right and to not play games with this family's lives. More information about how you can help get Evelyn home is in the description below.